Hey everyone, LOCLOUDANE or Chandler here with my wife, Mrs. LOCLOUDANE or Allie.
We're here celebrating 20,000 followers. Oh, subscribers. Sorry, I'm an Instagram person. 20,000 subscribers.
Yep.
And we're going to do another list of Chandler's favorite things. So,
Yeah. Last time, if you missed it, for our 15K kind of celebration, we did my top 10 games. And today I'm actually going to talk about my top 15 manga volumes. I thought maybe manga series, but then I thought more specifics, more interesting. As you can probably see back here, I have a huge collection of manga that surrounds this entire room. I prefer reading. I don't watch anime too much. You and I will watch a show every once in a while, but I actually prefer reading it. And I've read a lot, and so I'm really excited to talk about some of these series. Some of them are pretty mainstream. Some of them are really niche, and so I think I got a good mix of everything. Here's how this will play out, though. There are going to be spoilers for some of these series as we go along, and so to avoid, if you want to avoid like a specific series, I'm talking about the spoilers in it. I'm going to put timestamps at the bottom of the screen that you can jump ahead to, but I actually don't believe that spoilers ruin most stories, so I'm not too worried.
yeah, he'll flip to the back of the book to see what comes.
Yeah, I don't.
Drives me nuts.
Yes. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm just going to go volume from volume here, starting with my number 15 choice, which is actually a newcomer to my collection, which is Dawn to Dawn, Volume 9. Now, something interesting about compiling this list is that I found out that Volume 9 is peak of most series. Like I think I have 4 or 5 volumes in this that are all volume 9 of the series. Dead series. So this is Dawn to Dawn Volume 9. Dawn to Dawn is a brand new series, and I am absolutely in love, as you know.
Yes.
We watched the anime. We watched the anime of Dawn to Dawn together, the first season, and you really liked it.
Yeah,
right?
it's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Yeah. This takes place much farther than what the anime has covered so far, but Volume 9 is it's absolutely perfect. So why it's perfect is it introduces this new character named I believe it's Kenta. Kenta. I'll check that real quick. Kenta. He is fantastic. In fact, he's probably the single greatest character ever created. And I know that's a lot to say, but
why?
So if you remember in Naruto, one of the most clever things that Kishimoto, the author, did was he created the dumbest character in the world and make you love him.
Rock Lee.
Yeah, exactly. And I always thought, wow, like that was so clever. You know, take this like dorky, bowl cut, weird eyes, thick eyebrow kid, and you're just like, this kid's an idiot, and you're thinking what every other character's thinking, and then by the time you get to the part where Rock Lee is fighting Gaara, or even before that where he saves Sakura, you're just like, whoa, okay, you know. Unfortunately, he doesn't keep up. Rock Lee falls off, but Kenta is kind of like that too. But this volume is so amazing. So Kenta is like your atypical anime otaku nerd.
I don't know what otaku is.
Otaku is like a word they use for people who are like
nerd.
No, like all in, like the girls that wear the furry tails and like into anime and kind of Japanese culture and stuff. And it's funny because you can be an otaku in both outside Japan and in Japan. It's like, anyway, it's kind of like a fanaticalism, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of these kids, and we've all met a kid like this. But he is he's very proud, you know. Doesn't quite realize just how stupid he seems. But he's angry because the main character has been hanging out with Momo, the hot girl, you know, and he's like, I should have a girlfriend. I need to study why this nerdy kid is with this girl and I'm not. So he ends up kind of infiltrating their group of friends, and at the same time, an alien wearing a kaiju like Godzilla robot suit attacks. And earlier in the story, the main girl Momo's house is destroyed, and these aliens help her rebuild it by using this material. It's like nanomachines, so it can pretty much turn into whatever material you can think of. So they're escaping from this Godzilla, and they go inside the house, and they have to figure out what to do. And they talk about these nanomachines, and Kenta is like, I know what to do. We'll turn it into a robot. And so it turns into this giant robot that looks like this. So Kenta is like, is just going crazy. He's like, I'm in a giant mech with two girls in schoolgirl outfits. He's like just so excited. And anyway, I think if I could sum up this character in one picture, it would be this right here. He's just indescribably charming in the funniest way.
Huh.
But long story short, what ends up happening is that you find out this alien inside the Godzilla suit is this really pretty girl, and she came to find her husband, and in their culture, whoever beats them in battle, they have to marry. And she ends up, even though Kenta beat her, she ends up thinking it was the main guy. What's his name? Okuran.
Of course.
And so she kisses him, and Kenta is like so angry, and he spends the rest of the series trying to convince this girl that he beat her in battle, and so she needs to marry him. And it's just so good, so good. Number 15 on the spot. I had to put it on there.
So it's all because that one character.
Yeah, he just watch. If the author's smart, if Tatsu is smart at this, you'll be seeing this character for a long time. So.
Okay. All right. Number 14.
Number 14 is volume 9 of Inuyasha. I love the Inuyasha series. I don't hate the anime. But like when the manga series when the manga series drags on, the anime's in trouble. Like as an example, when they were creating the anime, they ended up just ending it because it was just going on for so long, and then they made like the final arc of the show a separate anime, and so they just cut out like this season, just kind of knitted together. But the quality of Inuyasha for the first probably 15-ish volumes is fantastic. I think that Rumiko Takahashi is a immensely talented artist and storyteller. I think the problem is that every time she makes a story, she makes tons of money. And why that's a bad thing is that the producers and probably her agent and everything want her to keep on going with a series. If she could just end a series whenever she felt like it, I think she'd do a better job. But you got Ranma 1/2, you have Inuyasha, you have all these different series, and they just go on for way too long. That being said, I find it kind of interesting that this is my favorite volume and has been for a long time because it actually has no main plot points in it. It's a whole side story. It's based off of an old myth, Japanese myth about a peach tree giving eternal life. And I think why I like it the most is that you really see some fantastic forward momentum in Inuyasha and Kagome's relationship. She ends up getting captured by this demon, and he's going to eat her, but he puts her in this spring to like marinate her soul, I guess. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what just, exactly.
You gotta have a spring.
But she's naked when she comes in the spring, and she wakes up and she's just like, oh my gosh, like why am I naked, right? And she's looking around, and at the same time, Inuyasha, for those who aren't familiar, Inuyasha is a story about a girl who goes back in time to feudal Japan. She ends up freeing this boy that's half demon, half human, named Inuyasha.
Inuyasha.
Yeah, exactly. Good job. And she ends up breaking this jewel into hundreds of shards, and so they spend the whole story kind of trying to find these magical jewel pieces. But Inuyasha, because he's half demon, every time there's a full moon or no moon, I can't remember which one it was, he becomes fully human for a day. And this happens while they're here. And so he ends up having to fight and save Kagome without. Anyway, so she's naked in this bath, and he comes breaking through the door trying to find her. And he comes in, and he is just covered in blood, and he's just messed up. But he's been fighting his way to get to Kagome. And of course, like they have like the typical anime, like like cover myself up kind of thing. But then there's like this true concern that comes out. And like the fact that Kagome is at the point now in her relationship with Inuyasha that she's naked, she doesn't have clothes. He gives her his overcoat, and he's like don't, sorry, it's bloody, but put this on. And she's like I'm not disgusted by your blood, And it's just this cute moment. There's this shot of them sitting there together, Yeah. And it's always I just love it. It's only like 3 pages long, but it does so much. I've made this point to you in stories, but like, I think that pornographic material and stuff is really kind of gave us this impression that nudity is this strictly sexual thing or something. But like I always find it interesting in stories when they use it to show like that the character's walls are coming down, a vulnerability. So, and I think that happens here. And then there's just this part towards the end of this volume where Inuyasha is fighting the bad guy, and he falls off a cliff and into this river, and they run down and they can't find him, and she's like starting to get like overwhelmed, and she's starting to cry, and she thinks he's dead, and ends up he didn't fall in the river, he fell on top into a tree. And so he gets down, and she's like angry at him and stuff, and this is this part where he's like, stop crying. She's like, I'm not crying. And Rumiko is such a good author.
Classic moment, I feel like.
Rumiko is such a good author because she knows how to make flawed characters. And I've made this point over and over and over again. We do not like perfect characters. We love flawed characters because we're flawed. And so, yeah, this volume is just a classic. And I'll read it singularly sometimes just because I love it so much.
Yeah. Okay, 13.
All right. I got to be careful with this one because this isn't just spoilers for all of you, but for you. And
How dare you put this one in here?
So I'm going this one will not have spoilers, kind of. I'm not going to be specific so that I don't ruin for you. But it's Attack on Titan Volume 26. Now, Attack on Titan is... I feel like Attack on Titan was and still is not appreciated as much as it should be. First of all, the author, Hajime Isayama, he is completely ashamed of his art style. He thinks he's terrible at drawing. Really? And to be honest, like I remember seeing, this volume this is 26, so he's had a lot more practice. If you go to volume 1 and 2, he's not very good at drawing really good proportions, and sometimes the characters look awkward, and so I get it. But man, Attack on Titan was true creativity. I think we sometimes see like kind of a bit of a copycat that's really good, and we're like, wow, that's so creative. And it is creative, but true creative is when you make something no one's ever seen before. Attack on Titan, it was this insane mix of horror but I wouldn't call it a straight up horror series, It's like an epic. It's an epic.
It pushes the limits in an unusual way.
It does. It pushes the limits, and one of the biggest limits that he pushes is actually in this volume. So what he ends up doing, what Hajime does in this story, you start off seeing these people that live behind these walls, and these titans are attacking them. And you get to know them. You feel bad for what they have to go through. Some of them are good, some are bad, but like you're on this side, like the titans, and then which you find out later on. There's a civilization behind the titans that are causing this. You're like, dude, I hate those people.
Yeah.
But then volume, I believe it's volume 22 or 23. There's perspective on the story changes. And it actually goes to that other civilization, which is roughly based off of like early Germany before like the Holocaust really took place. Kind of like during the rise of the Nazi Party, where the Jewish people were being forced to wear the Jewish star and register, and they're being treated terribly, but not quite to where we're in like internment camps. He's openly said like this was the inspiration, and this civilization works a little bit like that. And you find out that you find out that there's a connection between this I hate to call it Jewish race, but like that's what they're based off of, and the Titans. And anyway, point being, you spend time in this other civilization. And not just that, but some of the bad guys from the first half that were attacking the good guys that you hate are there, and you're starting to see what their lives are like. And you're starting to empathize with them and really understand like why they did what they did, why they are what they are. And it's interesting because in about 3 or 4 volumes, you're sympathizing with this side, and you're starting to see why they do what they do. It doesn't make it okay, but you're starting to understand like not everyone is doing this willingly and everything like that. But then something happens. The main cast, the main cast from the first half attack this civilization. And you see like these characters you just spent 4 volumes with being like killed in explosions. There's like a part where this boy gets smashed by a stone. And you kind of are seeing it all from the viewpoint of this little girl. This like not little, she's probably like 14.
And this happens in this volume.
So this is kind of building. Yeah, this is the attack's already happened. This is kind of the towards the end of this attack.
Okay.
You have but yeah, you have the main characters that are attacking, and they're doing it because they're fighting back. Like they've been treated like they've gone through terrible stuff, but at the same time, like they're killing innocent people that you now know through the story, and it is just fantastic. I actually don't have any tabs in this because I want to avoid spoilers, but it peaks in this point where this little girl, who's a soldier, by the way, the main cast from the first half are escaping on this blimp, and she ends up stowing away on it, and she breaks through and she pulls out a rifle and shoots a gun, and it ends up killing one of the prominent characters that you love. And it is
wow.
It is such a heart-wrenching moment because you now like both these characters.
Yeah.
And you don't hate her for what she did, but you're like, why did it have to be like this? One of
the perfect parallel of how war is.
Exactly. I think that's why I don't think it's quite appreciated enough. Attack on Titan does something I've never seen a story really do, which is I feel like it really gives you insight into what war truly is. War is essentially a conflict where there are no winners. Mm-hmm. There is a winner, right? Like the Alliance won World War II.
But everyone gets hurt.
But everyone got hurt. In Japan, even though they were in the wrong here, and we dropped America dropped 2 nuclear bombs on them, and there was a lot of good people who died. So I just think they do such a good job, and it just comes to a peak with that death. That death in this is probably the most pungent death in the entire show. And as you know, that's saying something because you lose a lot of good characters throughout.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Are we on 12?
We're on, let's see, 15, 14, 13,
12.
So this might be cheating because these are master editions. They're actually a compilation. But I don't know what the volume breakdown of these. I've never owned the individual volumes, and I actually don't recommend getting the individual volumes of this series. Get the master edition because it's amazing. But it's volume 4 of Knights of Sidonia. Okay, now the author is Nihei. It's his name is Tsutomu Nihei. Tsutomu Nihei is the single greatest mangaka, which is what you call authors who do manga, the single greatest mangaka ever. I think he tops Akira Toriyama in my opinion, and that's a heavily controversial opinion, but his stuff is pretty much perfect every time. Pretty much perfect every time. I think later on he loses a bit of his magic, but the first 3 series he made, which would be Blam. So it's Blam. There's this horror sci-fi one I just bought for Christmas, and then Knights of Sidonia are, I mean, just freaking near perfect. But Volume 4 does so many things that I love. Now, this is a little bit hard to explain. I'm not going to explain the story because it's too confusing. But essentially, what you have here is you have this ship of the last humans. The last of the human race, and they're on this giant ship, and they've been traveling through space for like almost like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. They're searching for another planet. Earth was destroyed by this like parasitic alien race, and that race is now hunting them down. And so what's crazy is like this is hard sci-fi, and when you say hard sci-fi, like it like has in-depth lore for all this stuff. But 2 kind of points I want to make that I love about this film. First is that the main character, and I can't remember his name right now, but the main character, he at the very first volume, he ends up falling in love with this girl, and then she dies during one of their battles out in space with this parasitic race, and the parasitic race actually takes her body and her consciousness and absorbs it. But it has this negative effect because the parasitic race falls in love with him. So it's like it has like this conflicting desire to destroy humans, but then it also loves the main character because this girl's love for him was so strong. And so it starts kind of producing her like clones of her and trying to reach out to him, and like this is a part inside of his cockpit when the parasite like creates the form of her and stuff, and it's trying to absorb him. And so like this scene right here where he gets kissed by this clone of her is like is
all the stuff around them
that's the organic that's the alien life form, okay. Right? And so it can produce whatever it wants organically, and so it produces these clones of her to communicate with him sometimes and stuff like that. But then at the same time, it's also trying to destroy all humans. So it's a very complex story. That's a very obscure, and that's a very very simple way to explain it, by the way. Right? But the other reason I love this is that it has one of the most unique characters I've ever seen. And so it's this I guess what we call them this today is like a they them, right? So how this race works, this human race, is that they're trying to preserve themselves. So they've genetically created what's I guess you would call a third gender, but it's not a third gender. They've created like an advanced form of human. Pretty much what it is that... I feel
like genderless?
No, they have a gender. So okay. So they are either male or female, and they develop a body according to who they kind of choose to fall in love with or kind of fall in love with because they're being pushed to mate, right? And so like if you fall in love with a girl, they made this race, this gender, whatever you want to call it, to be able to change to be a male so that you could reproduce. It's all in the sake of keeping the human race going. Okay. So you have this character here, and he starts out as a male, and he's a soldier with the main character, and he falls in love with the main character, in like a kind of almost against his will. Like it starts off as he admires him, and then he starts, and then what's amazing is that his body changes, and then he becomes a she, and she's trying to hide it this whole time. Anyway, oh man, it's so complicated. But last point here is that they wear these space suits that are organic. They're not like machinery or anything. They wear these organics, and there's like when they put them on, there's like this. I know this sounds weird, but there's like this worm that snakes into like your bladder, so that you don't have to go pee. You know, like a catheter, like a living catheter, and stuff, and it allows them to be out in space for months and months and months and stuff like that. So, but as this girl's body is changing, she's supposed to go and register and like let them know that she's changing so she can get an updated bodysuit. But she doesn't want anyone to know, especially the main character, because then he'll know why.
That she likes him.
Yeah, and so they're like going off to battle, and they're getting his suits, and her suit keeps on telling her that like wrong suit, like you do not fit this, you don't fit this. She's like, come on, and so she's like a hacker, so she like overrides her suit to force it to be on her, and then they're jumping into the ship, and the suit explodes off of her body.
Oh goodness.
and he's like and why, again, the story's so complicated. I know that sounds kind of dumb and shallow. It's really well done. And the other interesting thing is it wasn't like a political statement. I think authors nowadays would probably get caught up in that. Nihei was making sci-fi. He was making sci-fi, and that's such a sci-fi idea. Like, in order to preserve the race, you have these people who can change their gender in order to reproduce. That makes perfect sense. And but like the relationship between him and this girl is amazing. It's so complex, and it just has, anyway, so good. So that's number 12.
Yeah.
Wow, we better whip through these a little faster. All right, this will be a quicker one.
All right.
Number 11 is One Piece Volume 61. For those of you familiar with the One Piece series, this is the volume where the time skip happens.
Oh, which I haven't gotten here.
Yeah, you haven't gotten here yet. So the Straw Hats early on in the series get split up, and you kind of just exclusively follow Luffy for a good majority of the story. And I mean, this has been out long enough. I think people all know this, but Luffy's brother ends up getting killed because he's not strong enough. He wasn't strong enough to save him.
Because Luffy wasn't strong enough?
Yeah. Luffy had the chance to save him, and because he wasn't strong enough, he couldn't. Even though he was there with Ace, he couldn't. Ends up breaking him apart, and there's this scene where he's crying, and he's just like, I want to see my crew. And anyway, he sends a message out to them that to meet up in 2 years, because he's going to go off with this other character to train. And there's actually this amazing transition shot. I didn't mark it, but there's an amazing transition shot where he starts his training, he sets the straw hat down on a rock. And then the next panel is him picking it up, and it's been 2 years later. And he sets it on his head. Oh, wow. It's just a great transition. Yeah. Anyway, all the characters went through so much, and they all change. I think the change is good for the most part. I think that some of the redesigns of the characters isn't my favorite. Specifically the two girls. Nami looks fine. I think like it's kind of ridiculous. She wears like this string bikini and jeans. I think like later on she wears better clothing. She looks a little better, but she has like long hair. Looks a lot more feminine than she did in the first half. But Robin just gets massacred. She has boobs the size of planets, and she just looks less interesting, and it's really kind of a shame. Aside from that, though, there's some great changes that happen, but it all peaks with Luffy. The whole story that takes place during this volume is amazing. It's, there's this bunch of like low level pirates that have made a name for themselves by saying they're the Straw Hat Pirates. And so they're all like copies of the Straw Hat crew, but they're all like these like weird ones.
Yeah.
Like Zoro, like the copy Zoro is like super fat. And Robin is like a man dressed like a woman that looks like Robin. And Luffy is like this big fat, like bearded guy and stuff. And it's just, it is hilarious. Like, it is played for laughs, and it's so freaking good. But there's this part where Luffy, the real Luffy shows up, and everyone's like, "That's the real Luffy? That can't be," and stuff. And then this like killer robot guy comes, and Luffy just beats him in one punch, and everyone's like, and then he screams out, "I'm gonna be king of the pirates," like his famous line. Mm-hmm. That transition, so good. It's just a payoff of what Oda Sensei was doing in early volumes. It was interesting because when I was looking at One Piece, there wasn't really too many one volumes that stand out because it's an epic. It's an odyssey. It's good not because of individual volumes, because of the whole story it tells. And so yeah, but I would have to say that transition is fantastic.
Cool. Okay, next.
All right.
10.
Number 10. Number 10 is a volume from one of my favorite series, which is volume 21 of Blue Exorcist. Blue Exorcist is my favorite. I have to say, I did a reread. I tried to reread all these recently, but I did a reread of this, and I have to say I actually like it a little bit less than I thought I did. But that still means that the series, right? This still is in some of my top favorite manga series, but I think I've read other ones that have now surpassed it. That being said, volume 21 is a fantastic volume. Fantastic volume. It kicks off, I think that Kazue Kato, her superpower is creating situations that have multiple things going on at once. And they always feel like there's momentum behind them. And what happens in this one is that so you follow these two brothers. One of them's a demon and one of them's not. They were born together. They're twins. But they tested both of them, and only one of them received demon blood from their demon father, right? Who's the demon king. And the other one is completely human. But as the story goes on, you find out that he actually is a demon, but the demon king is keeping his blood kind of concealed. And as he struggles with this idea, he starts to realize like he is not human, but he's always looked down at his brother for being human and being kind of a monster somewhat, and that he was supposed to be like the good person. And so you kind of have like this
Uh-oh.
Well, I guess we'll just keep on going with only 2 cameras. All right. So as I was saying, though, this brother's starting to question, and he's starting to kind of lose his sanity a little bit. At the same time, there's this doorway that's been opened to allow demons into the human world, and this essentially demon magician guy, who's a good guy, ends up he's like the king of time, and he ends up freezing time around this demon gate to stop it for now. And he's giving this speech, and he ends up getting shot in the head. And what's so cool is that because the main character Rin is a demon, he instantly he's like, what is going on? Like, what is that? And he feels the demon gate opening, and it like explodes open. The demon gate. That now that the King of Time has been shot in the head, he couldn't keep this time bubble up and keep it frozen, and so it collapses, and this story just goes into pure chaos at this point. Pure chaos. There's just demons everywhere, and it turns from like this like shonen school fighting anime or manga, I mean, to like a post-apocalyptic story.
Just completely changes.
Completely changes the story. And the pivotal point is, so the main character has this sword that contains his demon powers. And he gets angry because his brother's going to go off with the bad guys and tries to stop him. And he goes to slash his brother, and his brother's latent demon powers come out, which is a shield that can block anything. And Rin, the main character's sword, ends up breaking as he's fighting his brother. You can see here the blade shattering. And it ends up unleashing Rin's like inner demon self, right? And he's just burning up everything because he's a fire demon, and he just starts burning everything in the vicinity. And all the main characters there, and this girl who starts off as one of the weakest characters but ends up becoming easily one of the strongest characters in the entire story. She saves everyone's lives by putting up this. She controls like plant life with her powers, and she ends up bringing up like this giant forest and stops the fire. And this scene is so potent, is that the demon Rin starts walking towards them, and this forest is just dissolving as he's walking towards them. And the main girl named Shiemi, she's like bleeding out of her nose, like she's like trying the best she can to keep his power from killing them and stuff. Anyway, and of course he does stop before he kills them and stuff, and it's really good. But I'm starting to realize, now I'm talking about a lot of these, some of my favorite points in stories is that pivot point.
Yeah.
Where it pivots to something else. When something big happens and it comes crashing down, or like the time jump in One Piece, or the Attack on Titan part that I was talking about.
Right.
I love that. And this is the pivot point of the whole thing. So.
Okay.
All right.
9.
This one will be pretty quick. The very first volume of Akira. Akira is notable for so many reasons. It's one of the manga that made manga popular in the West. It's also somewhat the birth of cyberpunk. I mean, essentially, I actually don't remember if this came before Blade Runner. Blade Runner came before this, but it would. I mean, like this. If you want to get into cyberpunk, Akira is like cyberpunk 101. Like start here, watch Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, and read Akira. Like that is the thing. And then watch the movie as well, which we've never watched because it's incredibly violent. But Akira is the movie, but it's an anime that was made in I want to say it's a 30 frame anime. So, or no, I meant 30 frame or 60 frame. Anyway, pretty much most anime is made in a certain amount of frames per second because they have to draw each individual panel. And Akira, the guy who did Akira, he tripled the regular amount of frames, and it's so fluid, and it's so seamless, it's so fluid. Many people say it's one of the greatest films ever made. And it's a summary of this story. The manga is the true story. The anime, kind of cobbles everything together. But this first volume, one of the most insane parts, so it follows this biker gang of like juvenile delinquents, and they're just punks, and they're not good kids. Like they're doing drugs and beating up rival gangs, and they're all kind of punks. Especially the main character, he's not a good kid. Like he's cheating on his girlfriend. He gets a girl pregnant, and then just is whatever. And to be honest, like despite being a kind of a terrible person, he ends up doing the right thing, but mainly because the main bad guy is another kid in his cycle group who ends up developing these psychic powers, and he becomes kind of this tyrannical, godlike enemy. And the main character, I I think his name's Kaneda. Kaneda is driven simply that it's their rule in their gang that if someone goes AWOL, they have to take them down. And so he goes through the whole story with the intent of, I'm going to kill, I can't remember his name. But there's this part where the psychic kid in Kaneda and their biker gang they're fighting the psychic kid, and the psychic kid pretty much blows the brain up of one of the characters in their biker gang, and Kaneda is like holding his body, and he ends up shooting the psychic kid with the gun that his friend was holding. And he doesn't kill the kid. He like hits him and he starts freaking out. Anyway, it is a tense scene. Like you're like, at this point you're caught up in it, and it is an intense scene, and it's so good.
Yeah.
So good. The rest of it is good. I'd say it actually it's 6 volumes, and I'd say like the middle volumes aren't actually that amazing, which is kind of weird because it's like this fantastic manga, but it kind of has like a bit of a valley in it, but it's well worth reading, and it's so good. So good. So Akira Volume 1. All right. We are on
8.
8. Okay. Number 8, Full Metal Alchemist Volume 13. Now, you've watched a little Full Metal Alchemist, but
It's been a bit, so
yeah.
I probably don't know any
and
of it.
usually never remember anything
No.
anyway, right? So Full Metal Alchemist, another top 10 series, another just amazing series, and kind of was doing a little bit of what Attack on Titan did. It definitely pushes that envelope, especially when it comes to like character deaths. But as you know, and as most of those who even heard of the series know, there's kind of a famous scene that takes place in this story where a alchemist fuses a dog with his daughter.
Yeah.
Because he needs to keep his alchemy license up, and he's like a genius who's done all this stuff, but he has no more good ideas. And so he ends up making the first, what they call a chimera that can speak. And they're all like, how did you make this? And even Al, the main characters, Ed and Al, are like, wow, like it can talk. Like, how did you do this? Like we've never seen this before. And they're fascinated until they realize why it can talk is because
It's
his daughter. And the dog calls the girl called Edward Big Brother. And then the dog calls him Big Brother. And that's how when he realizes.
I remember how like devastating that
oh
was.
my gosh, so good. It was such a potent part of the story. Yeah. Now that doesn't happen in this volume, but there's a part that does, which is why I want to talk about it. So this volume actually, they're confronting the homunculi, and Gluttony is this giant, big fat homunculi monster guy that he can eat anything. But you find out in this volume that he actually has like a whole another dimension inside his stomach. And he ends up firing like this. His mouth like opens up huge, and it shoots like this giant wave of whatever and eats everything in the path of this wave. And he fires at Edward, and Alphonse goes to save him, and it takes Edward. And you think at this point Edward's dead. And just this scene where Alphonse is reaching out and his arm's gone, and he's like, and Gluttony is actually sad too because he didn't realize it, but he ate Envy, which is one of the other chimera or homunculi. And so and he's like, give her back, and he's like, I don't know how, and it's just like, it's such a potent scene. But what ends up happening is that Edward gets trapped inside this dimension inside of this monster's stomach. And he gets entrapped with one of my favorite characters of the entire show, which is the prince of this like Asia. It's kind of like a country based off of China, I'm thinking. I can't remember his name. But he's this prince here, and he's so good. He's only in here for a very short time, which is kind of a shame. He gets possessed by a different character, and his and so, but up until then, he really makes a presence. But what ends up happening is that Edward ends up fighting envy inside Gluttony's stomach, and envy turns into this giant, gross-looking monster thing, and you find out that it's absorbing like the power. I can't even remember why this happens, but envy's this giant monster, and there's a bunch of faces in her skin, and one of them is like Big Brother, like that, and Edward is like horrified. Oh no, sorry, I'm sorry, I think. Shoot, I don't even remember why this is. I have to reread this series to know. But that's not even the best part of this volume. The best part is that Edward ends up triggering this something with his alchemy, and he ends up seeing what they refer to as like the door, right? The door that what is like the doorway that allows alchemy to pass from. And it, essentially, when people perform alchemy on an object, they're switching it with an object in this other side of this door.
Right.
And as some of you may know, this story follows two brothers who try to resurrect their mother, and because they don't know alchemy, it ends up taking their bodies. Edward gets his arm and leg taken, and Alphonse gets his entire body taken, but Edward seals Alphonse's soul to a suit of armor. But when he goes to the door, it opens up, and he sees Alphonse's body.
Right.
And it is like, I mean, the manga takes time. And that's unique for a manga. Like it lets these panels sit for a while. And then Alphonse is like, or Edward's like, ow, and he runs to go, and then the door starts bringing him back because he's not supposed to be there. And it just peaks at this point where he's going through the door, and he's like pointing through, and he's like, just you wait. He's like, you wait, I'm going to get you back.
Yeah.
And it is just, oh, gosh. So good. So good. It's stuff like that makes me think, I hope we're at the point now where people can kind of put their prejudice aside of anime and manga and kind of what it's kind of been considered for so long. Some of the greatest stories are told in these books.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest stories are told in these books.
Well, I thought it was dumb.
Yeah. And I've since turned your opinion with Cowboy Bebop, Full Metal Alchemist,
this was
Naruto.
one of the first ones we watched together.
This was, you're right. And it's so good. So volume 13, amazing. All right. Here's a fun one. Another volume 9, actually. This is volume 9 of Katekyo Hitman Reborn.
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to call it Reborn, but now this story is a tragedy because only when it was in publication, it only came out with, they only translated like 14 or 15 volumes. And it's like a 40 volume series. And because it just it must have not gotten the numbers it needed. I think if it re-released nowadays, it would be popular. I mean, It definitely fits that dawn to dawn,
it was maybe
wacky.
Just too early.
But I do actually see why it failed, because this is what they call a slow burn. So the story is essentially there's a mafia family in Italy that are like the top mafia family, and the mafia boss of the family dies, and he has no children, and so they trace his lineage back, and they find out that this kid, this like high school kid in Japan, is the closest blood relative. And so they send their best hitman, which I know sounds so stupid, is like a baby, like a walking, talking baby who's their best hitman, to go and train him to be ready to become. It's the Vangola family, become the Vangola boss. That's the storyline.
Okay.
And the first 7 volumes are literally just wacky shenanigans that introduces a massive cast of characters. Just a massive cast of characters.
So the story starts in 8, and then 9 is when it gets good.
No, the story doesn't start in 8. That's the interesting part about this. This series probably didn't make it because when you're reading these first 7 volumes, you're kind of like, okay, where are we going here? Like, this is funny, but like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? What's interesting though is that during those 7 volumes, some very important stuff is introduced, but it's introduced like it's just kind of this passive, wacky stuff. Okay, for example, there's a character called Bianchi, and she's in love with the baby. His name's Reborn. Don't ask. But she's an assassin too, and she kills people with poisoned food, and she can't cook anything that's not poison. So she always offers to make dinner, and everyone's like, no, and stuff. And the main character just is driven nuts by her, but she moves into their house, like, because she's in love with the baby, and she and then Reborn, the baby, right, is training the main character. His name's Suna. The main character become this boss, and he's like, you need henchmen. And so he ends up picking up like all these different characters. He ends up picking like the girl he has a crush on. Her older brother is a boxer, and he ends up picking up him as one of his henchmen, and there's one of my favorite characters is this kid who plays baseball, and he's just like the like flawless, handsome jock. And he, for the longest time in the story, he actually doesn't, he thinks everything is just a game. He doesn't realize like it's the real mafia, and like bad guys are really coming to like try to kill him sometimes. And he's like, this is great. Like, this is so fun. And like, sometimes people are shooting at them, and he's like, dang, this feels real, And so it's played so well. Anyway, you have all this cast of characters, and then you have Suna. The entire story pivots on Suna. So Suna is pretty much like this, like at the very beginning, he's just a loser. And he's like a real loser. He's not like a smart kid who everyone hates, kind of like Okarun from Dawn to Dawn, right? Like, he's lazy. He doesn't try anything. He's not confident in himself. He thinks he knows he's a loser, all this stuff. And it's essentially about him believing in himself. And I know that's kind of like a cliche kind of thing that stories do, but it does it so well because it spends 7 volumes showing you like how pathetic this kid is. Like, and all he wants to do is just not be a mafia boss and not have people in his home that use guns and all this stuff like that.
Okay. So is this when he decides he's going to work?
So what ends up happening is that this rival mafia family attacks, and they end up actually really hurting one of his people. And Reborn is like, look, he's like, mafia is about family. He's like, those people hurt your family. He's like, it is up to you to make things right. And Suna is like, but so funny thing is like, he can't fight. I don't want to get into it, but when he gets shot with this certain kind of bullet, he ends up like becoming strong in fights. But it's like a gag. Like his clothes always blow off of him, and he's just in his boxers every time, and he looks ridiculous and stuff like that. But they're fighting this family, and everyone's protecting him because he can't fight, and everyone else is fighting to help. And he ends up, there's like Bianchi, the girl who like poisons the poison food girl, like she ends up getting stabbed and is like dying. You can see here, like she ends up getting stabbed in the stomach. It is dying. And then Gokudera, which is like one of his most loyal henchmen, who pretty much fights all his battles for him. Mm-hmm. He ends up being like absolutely obliterated. Like he's on the ground just bleeding out and stuff. And Suna is trying his hardest, but he sucks at everything. And there's actually like there's this part where he goes to fight the main bad guy, and he has this whip, and he goes to whip, and then it comes around, whips him in the eye, trips him, and he falls on his face, right? Like he's just pathetic. But what's important is, by this volume, like this is the first time in the story that he's trying. He's trying. And like this part where, so the main bad guy in this arc, he can take control of other characters and force them to do stuff, and he's forcing this little kid to kill them all, and they can't fight back. They don't want to hurt him. And the little kid goes to kill Suna, and Suna's like, it's not your fault. Like, don't worry. And it's so good. It's so good because if you know who Suna is, you know that he's grown. Growth, right? Like, that's what this is about, growth. And I'm going to skip ahead. I had so many things I wanted to talk about here, but it gets to the point where Suna has no one else who can fight for him. Everyone is either dead or not dead. Everyone is either beat up and can't fight, or they're being controlled, or both, right? And Reborn, there comes this point where Suna is doing what he always does, which he's just like, I don't know what to do. I can't fight him. I'm not strong enough and stuff. And Reborn just smacks him. And he's like, you're more suited to be the 10th generation Vengola than anyone. It's something I know beyond question, but it's up to you to believe. And it is like, it's this moment, and it's punctuated by this scene where he kind of gets his true power. And you see Suna no longer as this wimpy little kid who's a whiny kid, but finally someone who's strong enough to protect his family. And oh my gosh, it is so worth going through 7 volumes where it really just seems like it's like Monster of the Week kind of style of storytelling but then it literally uses everything set up in those 7 volumes during volumes 8 and specifically 9. It literally uses everything it brought in to get you this payoff, and it is almost unsurpassed.
Yeah.
So good.
That makes me think of, I saw something this week about a study about people who feel like they're lucky. Have you seen this?
No.
So they asked people if they thought they were lucky or not, and then they had them do this exercise. They gave them this newspaper or magazine or something. And they said, count how many images are in this. So they go through and they count. Well, on the second page, in these giant letters, it says, stop counting, there are 42 images. And all the people that thought they were lucky saw that, closed it, told them they're 42. None of the people who felt that they were unlucky
No way.
saw it. And so they were saying, like, if you feel like you're lucky, you will notice more opportunities.
That is so cool.
And that it makes me think of that.
Well, that's
right?
a great way to put it.
But, like,
it's the lesson it's teaching.
He views himself as a loser.
Yes.
He is a loser.
Yeah.
And as soon as, like, the baby is like, you're the one who has to do this, then he's like...
Oh, it's so true.
It changes,
It's
right?
so true. It's so true. And what's cool is that his growth continues throughout the whole thing until, like, by the end of it, he is the boss. And, like, he is confident. And it is so good. So good. All right.
3 to 5?
This is 6, I believe. No, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 6. Number 6 is volume 16 of Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles. Now, for those who are familiar with manga, this is a collaborative team that writes these manga. They call themselves Clamp. I believe they're 3 women. And they are some of the most famous manga creators ever. I mean, like, their stories have been going on for 40, 50 years.
Okay.
I mean, they're anyway. But Reservoir Chronicles Tsubasa is interesting because it's like the Avengers of their series, of their writing. So the story is about these characters who are traveling from world to world, and each world isn't a world of one of their previous stories, one of Clamp's previous stories, but there's characters from all their different stories. So if you're a big Clamp fan, this was like this was a big deal. But one of the biggest things is that the main characters are Sakura and Shaoran. And Sakura and Shaoran were the main characters in another series called Sakura card captor Sakura. And so when you start reading this, you're like, oh man, it must be the Shaoran and Sakura from that previous series. But you find out no, it's like everything else. It's the same characters, but completely different story, completely disconnected. Well, essentially the story breaks down that Sakura loses all her memories, and they all get scattered across this like multiverse in the shape of feathers. And so they're collecting the feathers to get her memories back. But Shaoran, the main guy, whom they were kind of in love at the beginning, he in order to get the power to travel to the different worlds, he gives up her memories of him. So they're going to get all her memories back, but she will never remember him. So you're already like, wow, that's crazy. But volume 16, another pivotal volume in the series, you find out that the Shaoran who you've been following for the whole story is essentially a clone of a Shaoran who was captured as a child. And he's technically like a robot, I guess you could think of. He's being controlled. He has to follow the orders of this sorcerer who's the main bad guy. And it gets to the point where the sorcerer wants him to collect all Sakura's feathers because she becomes more powerful and he's going to use her power. Well, there's this part where they can't get this feather. These bad guys, they're actually not bad guys, but these other characters are using it and they won't let them have it. And so they're thinking about letting them keep it. And then the sorcerer takes over the body of the main character, Shaoran, and forces him to kill them and get the feather. And so all of a sudden now, the main bad guy is the main good guy. It does this complete 180. And all the other characters that joined Shaoran, they're like trying to stop him. And one of them is this mage. And in this story, your eyes hold your magical power. And so Shaoran, in order to get the ability to travel the different worlds and keep on collecting Sakura's feathers, the bad Shaoran, he ends up ripping out this guy's eye and eats it.
Such an anime thing.
Yeah, such an anime thing. And it's epic because there's this scene where this other character shows up and he's like, what have you done? But the really cool part is that you find out that the real Shaoran that this clone was made from, he ends up escaping from where he's being captured, and he goes to help them and stop the fake Shaoran. And he shows up, and there is for anyone who's a fan of Clamp, this was insane. So the bad Shaoran summons his sword, which he got earlier in the series, and then this newcomer Shaoran, the good Shaoran, summons his sword, and it's the sword of Shaoran from Card Captor Sakura. And you find out that he is that character, and that Tsubasa is a sequel to Card Captor Sakura. And it is...
And this is the volume you find that out.
This is the volume you find out. And man, it is just like, whoa,
Yeah.
Like I can't even explain how cool of a that was, but it so good. So good. That's why it's number 6.
Yeah.
Number 6. Okay, now we're into our top 5. I'll try to make this one quick. Yu Yu Hakusho Volume 12. Now, interesting enough, this is one of the only manga, I think that the anime is better than the manga. But Toshihiro Togashi, who is married to the author of Sailor Moon, he is an amazing, amazing artist. But he's temperamental. And so sometimes, and lazy sometimes. Well, he's not lazy. He actually has a back injury that makes it really hard for him to draw.
Okay.
But some of these panels are just fantastic. So this, for those who know the story, this is the final fight between Yusuke Urameshi, the main character, and Toguro, who's the one of the main baddies. So many things happen here. So many exciting, pivotal moments. I don't think I'll go into them, but so many fantastic moments and
beautiful artwork
and beautiful artwork. It's some of his best. Like you look through some of the manga, and there's like some that are just like stick figures. Like it's insane how back and forth the quality of the art goes. But this is peak, and then the story is peak too. I mean, you know, one of the cliches of anime is the tournament arc.
Yes.
You've heard me talk about this before, right?
I've seen it.
You've seen it many times.
Yes.
There's not enough tournament arcs in this world. There's not enough tournament arcs in this world, but the Dark Tournament, the Dark Tournament, which is what this arc covers and this volume closes out, the best. Bar none. The best.
Best tournament.
So, all right, number 4. Oh my gosh. Probably one of the most fantastic series to recently be released. And that's Chainsaw Man Volume 9. Chainsaw Man Volume 9. Oh, Chainsaw Man. So, Chainsaw Man is good because it's not like Attack on Titan or even Full Alchemist where it pushes the line. It redefines the line. It does not follow anything that normal manga follows. Like it breaks all the rules. It does whatever it wants. There's literally a scene where Chainsaw Man, who is a boy who has chainsaws that burst out of his face and his arms, is riding a giant shark that's flying in the air, fighting a monster that can shoot bombs out of its forehead. Like, there is just no rules. And it is fantastic because where it has this insanely wacky world and story that happens, its character stories are so grounded. It's what makes it fantastic. All this insane stuff is happening, but the interactions between characters is perfect. It's perfect. But it all comes to a head here. Now, there's a major spoiler. If you haven't skipped ahead and you're interested in this series, I would highly recommend skipping ahead. I don't believe spoilers usually ruin stuff. This will ruin the experience for you. Okay? You've been warned. But Chainsaw Man... so the whole goal up to this point in the story has been that Chainsaw Man needs to beat the Gun Devil. So in this world, there's devils that are created from people's fear of an object or an event or a something, right? Chainsaw Man is the chainsaw devil. He's born from the fear of chainsaws. That's like where he comes from. But the Gun Devil is one of the strongest devils out there. And long story short, the Gun Devil ends up possessing Denji's, one of Denji's friends. Denji is the main character, sorry. Chainsaw Man's friends. And Chainsaw Man has to fight him. And up to this point, like, the fights are bombastic. And so it gets to this point, and there's this scene where Denji's friend shows up on his doorstep, and he's the Gun Devil. And Denji is like, we have to fight? And then it switches, okay? This entire fight takes place in the Gun Devil's head, okay? Now, follow me here.
Okay.
The fight is actually happening outside of it, but you're seeing it from the Gun Devil's perspective and the guy who is possessed by the Gun Devil. He has this memory of being out having a snowball fight with his brother, and his brother and his entire family ends up getting obliterated by the Gun Devil when he was little. And he tells this story about having a snowball fight with his brother, and he gets mad at his brother and tells him he doesn't like him. And his brother says, fine. He walks off the house, and then all of a sudden you see the house just blow up. And his brother's dead. And he regrets it. And so it then switches. So when he goes to fight Denji, it switches to him and Denji having this snowball fight as kids. And it kind of cuts in with some of the real fight, but not a lot of it.
Interesting.
And so they're having this snowball fight, and every time he gets hit with a snowball, it's actually Denji like hitting him, or when he throws a snowball, it hits Denji, and he's like, ow, like it's him in real life hurting him.
That's cool.
It's really cool. But this part like nearly brought me to tears. Is this character who gets possessed by the gun devil is all of a sudden getting hit by like tons of snowballs. He's like, ow. And he's like laughing, but he's like, ow, hey. He's like, hey, ow, 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 that really hurts. He's like, hey. And then it shows Denji and he's crying. Boy Denji. And he's like, how come you're crying? And then he falls over and he's like, I'm done. He's like, I don't want to play anymore. And he walks away. And then Denji isn't there. And then he sees his brother and his family at the house. And so he walks back into the house because he's now dead.
Oh.
And this is the last thing you see in this volume.
Wow.
And it is...
That's sad.
It is not just sad. It's like... It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I think that's what makes Chainsaw Man so fascinating to me. Is the author Tatsuki Fujimoto. He's using this as a platform to tell a story. And like people will see it. Like, dude, the story starts off and Denji's goal is he wants to touch boobs. And it's like, and you hear the synopsis and you're like, this is the stupidest story ever. And the thing is that it subverts every expectation you will ever have. And this snowball fight scene is one of the most potent scenes in the entire series so far. I mean, it's still ongoing, so maybe I have confidence that Fujimoto is creating a masterpiece. So far, it is a masterpiece. We'll see if he can finish it out like that. But so good. All right. Number 3 is volume 26 of Naruto.
This is Naruto Sasuke fight.
This is the Naruto Sasuke fight. Yes, good job.
Thank you.
Masashi Kishimoto, I just feel so bad for the guy. He could not stick the landing of Naruto. Mainly because of the same reason why Inuyasha ended up not being as good is because he made tons of money and his producers and his forced him, and he wanted to be out. He talks about it in his author journals, which is one of the most fascinating parts about manga, by the way. A lot of authors will like journal in these so you can read about their life and stuff. And he talks about how like he is getting tired, and he doesn't know if he can keep an interesting story going on. I think that the story peaks at the point where Naruto fights Pain. It kind of builds up that moment. Honestly, if it had ended somewhere around there, I think we would have had a really good story. I don't hate what comes after, but
it's just not like the rest of it.
It's like a whole different quality.
So why this one versus like the Pain fight?
So this is because first of all, the Pain fight takes place over like 7 volumes. But even then, even if it was 1 volume, this is Kishimoto's best artwork. This is his best quality drawing. You open up to any panel in here, and it is so clean and so well done. I think he actually took extra time to do these 2 volumes that this fight takes place. But this is where the emotional point of the story peaks. Sasuke's off. He's leaving to go join Orochimaru because he needs power in order to beat his brother, and Naruto's trying to stop him. And Sasuke has never seen Naruto's demon powers until this point. And Naruto is like getting really strong, and like Sasuke actually like stabs his hand through Naruto like and thinks he killed him, but Naruto's demon powers heals him up, and Sasuke is like, what are you? And this panel right here, where Naruto is like your friend. that line hits so hard. That line hits so hard. But just I had to put this up here. I mean, I love Naruto, honestly, even with how it ends. But Kishimoto should be recognized for what he did in these 2 volumes, because they are they're masterpieces. You could take almost any panel in this and make it a wallpaper for your computer. I mean, like each thing, and it's so well done. So well done. So, volume 26 of Naruto. Number two is another cheating one because it's a master edition, is Blam, volume 2. Now, Blam is actually spelled blame, but apparently it's supposed to be the sound of a gunshot. So it's actually Blam. That's why it has an exclamation mark at the end. It's again done by Tsutomu Nihei, who did my Knights of Sidonia.
The other master one you have.
Yeah, so this was his first full series that he did. He actually did like a they call them one shots, and it's what got him the ability to do this. This is a modern masterpiece. There is no bad part in this, and there's not even like a good, better, best volume. Every volume is amazing. The whole story is amazing. It's an abstract story. It never tells you what's going on. It tells you what's going on. You have to infer what's going on through the world and through the culture and what you learn, everything like that. Every time I read this, I learn more about it, and it is just freaking fantastic. It essentially follows this guy named I think it's Keeley, something like that. And he, you know what? I'm not going to explain the story. Pretty much what happens is that he's just this relentless machine. He's immortal, so he can't die. He can get like absolutely destroyed. There's a part later on in the story where he gets like engulfed in lava, and he takes like 400 years to recover and break out of it. The story takes place over there's panels of him walking that signify like hundreds of years passing. The world's been completely obliterated. It's just like this post-apocalyptic world. He's immortal. And man alive, it is so freaking good. But he has this laser gun. It's like his main weapon. And just there's this one panel I'll show where he's fighting like this almost like Cthulhu style like big monster. And he fires the laser. Let me find this page. He fires this laser through it, and you just see the laser beam blasting through multiple buildings and everything like that. And this building ends up collapsing, and he falls like millions and millions of feet down, and he just crashes. He hits the ground, picks it, gets himself up, and continues on his mission.
Wow.
It's like, look, I'm not selling this one as good as all the others, I think, because the story is just too hard to explain.
Yeah.
If you're going to read anything I talk about here, read Blam.
Bam!
Read Blam.
The art is really cool, too.
It's perfection. It's perfect media. There's rarely is there perfect media out there. This, FLCL, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? Those are perfect media. All right, final volume. And I know that any avid manga readers are going to see this volume and just be like, this guy's on crack. And it is volume 19 of Bleach. Now, Bleach is the greatest shonen manga to ever be made up to volume 20. And then it's pretty much complete garbage. Like it is such a shame. It's such a shame. I actually read a quote that Tite Kubo, he's the author, that Tite Kubo can't tell a story. He just draws cool shit. Like that was the exact quote. And I agree. but he actually did tell an interesting story. And it peaks at this point. This volume covers when Ichigo, the main character, receives he ends up training and learns this new power called Bankai. Very atypical of a shonen manga. But what's interesting is that every other character up to this point, their Bankai, or ultimate power, sorry, let me back up. Bankai is where they have these swords, these like samurai swords, that are used to like slay ghosts. They transform, and what's cool is that every character at this point, their Bankai has been huge. Like there's one character that his Bankai is pretty much a dragon that he holds onto a hilt that's its tail, and it's as big as a building, you know. And like the character he's fighting in this scene, his Bankai is like in another dimension. And so Ichigo goes into Bankai, and you're like, if you're reading this or watch the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, what's this gonna look like? What's it gonna look like? And it shows up, and it's just this simple black samurai sword. And you're like, that's cool, but what the heck? And the character he's fighting actually voices that opinion. He's like, is that little thing your Bankai? He's like, it's an ordinary samurai sword, essentially, right? He's like, you keep on souling the name of us Soul Reapers. He's like, that's not a Bankai. And he's like, I'm gonna kill you now. And he goes to kill him, and then all of a sudden Ichigo is right in front of him and has his sword up against him, up against his throat. And for the first time, this character's bad guy, Byakuya, I think is his name. Byakuya is like he's surprised because he's really strong, and he did not see Ichigo move. And you find out that Ichigo's Bankai is speed. That's why it's small. That's why it's just a normal sword, because it's not the sword that changed, it's his body. And it is so good. The whole thing though, the fight is so well done. I mean, Tite Kubo, he can write cool fight scenes. He has such a talent with drawing movement and characters and actions and momentum. It's something that like a lot of manga struggles to really produce is momentum. It is so well done, and in a vacuum, it's perfect. In a vacuum, it's perfect. This is the single greatest volume of manga I own. And
I never would have guessed it.
I know. And but the reason is because pretty much because of what's done before this. After volume 20, if you read this and you go from volume 20 to like volume 48 and read volume 48 and then stop, you have a perfect story. But volume 19, till the day I die, I will argue
something better comes out.
I will argue that it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. This has
we got 14 great contenders.
Very much. Yeah, so that's my 15 volumes of manga. I'm sure this video is so freaking long. Really appreciate all those who stuck around, not just to watch this video, but who've supported me. I want to specifically thank all of my Patreon members. If you'd like to join Patreon, I'll have the link in the description below. And thank you for supporting me as I do this thing I've always dreamed of. And again, I want to thank you, Allie, for all your support too.
Anytime.
All right. Well, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you later.